Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's Here for Business webinar. Today's session, run by the Business Growth Hub, is the fourth in a series of seminars aimed at supporting Greater Manchester businesses through these really uncertain times. Previous sessions can be accessed, and we will be sending out a link so that if you do want to go back and view some of the sessions that have happened before, you can do. And obviously, there's lots more to come as well, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about that after today's session. So today we're going to be talking about reducing costs, enhancing efficiency, improving productivity, and maximising profits. I'm Sam Booth, and I'm the Chief Executive of Pro Manchester, which is the membership organisation that represents the business community in and around Greater Manchester. And today I am absolutely delighted to be joined by our expert panel, who I'm going to invite to introduce themselves in just a moment. But before I do, just wanted to do a bit of housekeeping. So we will be inviting you to ask some questions, and down at the bottom right-hand side of your screen, there is a questions box. Please do pop your questions in there, and we will leave a little time at the end to go through those questions, or if relevant, we perhaps pop them into the conversation as well as we go along. Okay, all of the questions will be anonymous as well, so please do feel free to ask some questions and contribute to the discussion. That would be great. Okay, so today I am joined by Nick Brandwood, Business Growth Hub Manufacturing Advisor, Salma Chowdhury, Business Growth Hub Innovation Advisor, Martin Kirkham, Managing Director of Rapid Colour Services Limited, and Paul Wareham, Northwest Policy Lead for the Federation for Small Business. So I'm just going to invite them to just tell you a little bit more about themselves. So we'll start with you, Nick, if you will.
Thanks, Sam. Morning, everybody. I'm Nick Brandwood. I'm manufacturing advisor, or one of the manufacturing advisors for Greater Manchester. I've lots of experience in sort of doing lean improvements and operational excellence in manufacturing, in supply chain, and also in non-manufacturing environments as well. So hopefully that will be of interest and of relevance today. That's it, really. Hope you enjoy it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nick. That's important, isn't it? It's, you've got your manufacturing background, but it is about all business that we're here to help today. Yes. So we will be making sure that it's relevant and valuable to everybody. Salma.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Salma Chowdhury. I'm an innovation advisor with the Business Growth Hub. I've only actually been here not that long, about a month, but I have been a business advisor for a long time, probably about over 15 years. I've also launched several businesses of my own as well, from service through to manufacturing, and hoping that I can hopefully share some of my knowledge and help some of the people listening today.
Absolutely. I think it'd be really valuable. Thank you. Martin.
Morning, everybody. Martin Kirkham, Managing Director of Rapid Colour Services. We're a manufacturing company based in Lee, near Wigan. Easiest way to describe our business is an industrial version of the paint mixing system that you see in B&Q. Customers bring samples, we mix colours and supply industrial quantities within 2 to 3 days for industry.
Brilliant. Thank you, Martin. And Paul.
Morning, Sam. Morning, everyone. Paul Wareham, FSB Policy Lead for the Northwest, which is a role I've been in for the last 2 years. And the other day job is running an accountancy practice in North Manchester.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we've got a wealth of knowledge today. So I know that we're going to be able to get some expert tips and advice on everything that we wish to discuss. And one of those things is talking about obviously reducing costs at the moment, when we all know that there's the cost of living crisis is on the horizon, and it's making people feel uncertain and unsure. So today we're going to really have a look at how we can really help you kind of navigate these really difficult times. So when we're talking about reducing costs, perhaps I can talk to maybe Martin and Nick first. And what are the founding principles that businesses should understand when they're looking to reduce those costs?
I think what's interesting, because when we talk about lean and lean thinking and lean principles, we always associate it with being manufacturing. And it's nice to have these sessions where we've got non-manufacturers in as well, to just sort of see how it's relevant in non-manufacturing as well. And I think sort of the key principle to think of in lean thinking that makes it relevant to non-manufacturing is listening to the voice of the customer, really understanding what the customer values in your process. And by adding value, I mean those transactions, those activities that take place that take your product or your service from its starting point and all the steps that transform it into something that the customer is prepared to pay you for. And there will be costs associated with that, but there will also be all the non-value added activities that you undertake in your process. And the opportunity really in cost cutting in manufacturing and non-manufacturing is to identify and eliminate the costs associated with those non-value added activities. And by non-value added, in both manufacturing and non-manufacturing, I mean the activities where you're looking at duplication of activities, where you're looking at things being not right first time, where there's any waiting in your process, where there's over processing as well, which can be doing more for the customer, either giving more of a service or more functionality than the customer's actually paying for, or just paying more for it in terms of your utilities and what you pay for your utilities to provide that product or that service for your customer. And a big one as well is doing things before they're required is a big challenge, actually doing things early. And that's kind of got two hits. If you're doing an activity before the customer actually requires it, it means that there's something that is required or could be required that you're not doing. And also there's the thing about why are you doing things before they're required? And that's often to batch them together to dilute the inefficiency of it as well. So there's a big opportunity to look at all of those wastes, all of those non-value added activities, and understand why you're doing them. And that's part of the challenge. I think for me, if people remember one phrase from today, it's everybody solving problems every day. That's kind of lean thinking, to look at the costs that you're building in your business around those non-value added activities, and everybody solving problems every day to eliminate those. That's what I'd like people to take away from today.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think we are going to talk about how do we perhaps, kind of get that kind of information and really get everybody on the journey with you to really give you that input as well, just a little bit later on as well. But I'm just going to move on to Martin. And is there anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think an important thing to follow on from what Nick was saying in terms of getting the customer voice, from our perspective, we compete against anyone from a very large multinational who's got far more purchasing power, technical ability and competence and skills, but we're still able to be more agile, outservice them and win business. And it's because we actually listen to what that customer wants and discard the other bits that they don't necessarily want. So we compare it back to exactly what that customer needs, meet their expectations exactly, and win their business. And a big thing that we've done a lot with Nick is standardize throughout your business. We used to have numerous forms of packaging. So we'd stop machines because we weren't aware of what packaging format to use for a customer. Standardize and improve your efficiencies all the way through your business. On lead times, on incoming materials, dispatches, try and standardize everything. And then it's less to deal with on a daily basis, and allows you to move forward as a business.
Yeah. No, and it becomes sort of automatic in the process, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely. So just improves that efficiency. And Salma, I think you wanted to add something along the lines of looking at understanding the objectives as well, isn't it? So actually, when you look at standardizing this, it's understanding, and I think Nick touched on it as well with regards to understanding why you're doing it and what value that's adding.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and I think both Nick and Martin have already relayed that message. But it is really important to understand what your customer needs and what they actually want and what their buying triggers are. And I just wanted to give a couple of examples, really. So I had a skincare company, and before I was about to launch it, I was going to put my my moisturizers and creams in a 50 ml jar. But actually, when we got some feedback, we realized that actually our customers and our demographic customers weren't really, how much was in the jar wasn't really a buying factor. They were more bothered about how effective the product would be, what the ingredients would be, etc. And so we were able to use a smaller jar, like a 30 ml jar instead, which was only pennies in difference. But obviously, when you're buying in thousands, that makes a massive difference. But not only that, even the product that we use, we were able to use less, obviously, because it was a 30 ml. So it is about understanding that customer and making sure that they really, you really understand them and what makes them buy from you. And the other example that I wanted to give as well is something that Martin just mentioned then about standardizing products and standardized products. So one of the mistakes that I made when I first started was went to a big bottle manufacturer and chose this really nice bottle, which was a bespoke bottle. So what that meant was that we only had that one supplier for a start. And secondly, we had to order a huge quantity. And so when they came, they were in these huge pallets. So we needed extra room to store them. So, that meant that we had to take on an extra storage unit. And again, that was a lesson learned. But and again, if we had we chosen standard products, which we switched to later, it's more competitive in terms of pricing and who you're buying from. And also it gives you that flexibility of buying a smaller quantity as and when you need it. So, again, reducing costs really in terms of not having to, buy extra space to store things.
It's a real looking in the mirror thing, that, isn't it? To sort of think something that you think was adding value for the customer, that realization that it actually doesn't, and it's really just a cost for you. It's it's a real looking in the mirror thing, that.
Yeah, definitely. Just because you think that it might be of value doesn't necessarily mean that it absolutely is. And so, what is the best way to really kind of get to understand what the customer needs? What advice would you give with regards to sort of galvanizing that information, Nick?
To me, and it'd be interesting to get Martin's view on this as well. But to be talking to the customer really is the big thing on that, understanding what the customer really wants and their frustrations, and having that dialogue, so that you're not just having conversations with them in the bad times, that you're getting feedback, understanding not just why they've stopped buying from you, but why they do buy from you. Nip those conversations in the bud and build that relationship. Understand your competitor behavior as well is also one. If there's some work that you believe you should be winning and you're not, why not? Is it purely price, or are there other elements of the service that are appreciated?
I think it's also important to try and get more than one contact at a different level. So we have commercial agreements and we have commercial negotiations with the purchasing manager. We've got technical contacts where we're talking about the next projects that are coming on stream next year. So that's a technical level discussion. And then we also have a demand and a factory-based contact. So with the works manager, how are the products working in your process? Down to the packaging, should we put less in the bag to make it easier for your guys to lift it? Because if you only have one contact, you're only going to get one perspective. And buyers and purchasing managers will give the narrative that suits them at the time. Be it you're too expensive, where yes, you may be slightly more expensive, but you bring in faster service, lower order quantities, lower scrap levels, but you won't get that from the purchasing team. You'll only get that from the works manager or from the technical side. So try and broaden the level of interaction that you have with your customers and potential customers as well, if you can.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting point, actually. So making sure that you've got that diversity that actually relates to everybody, not just one particular department. At Pro Manchester, obviously, we'll deal with everybody within a business is essentially a member of Pro Manchester, and we offer such a sort of varied product service that it's actually really important to understand why everyone uses Pro Manchester for perhaps a different reason. So it's really, really, really important to understand each and every one of those individual needs and helping to adapt us as a business to make sure that we can provide that, but in the most efficient way possible. Paul, I'd just like to sort of maybe perhaps bring you in, and there are many tools that we can use to sort of take costs out of a business. What can we learn from some of the best companies that we know? And you must be working with an awful lot of companies within your role at the Federation for Small Business. And what can we learn from other businesses?
I think one of the things that's coming up with us now, especially in the service business, is the automation, and that's helping with touch points with the customer. Because running a service business, you've always got the expectation gap of what you think you're delivering is right and what the customer expects you to deliver. So one of the things that we're seeing implemented a lot is continually talking to the customer and guiding them through. For us, we spit out a set of accounts at the end of the process, but we'll guide the customer through the whole process. This is what happens next. This is why it's important for you. This is what I'm going to need. This is who's going to contact you. So it's just those regular, you cannot have too many touch points with the customer. So you're both on the same page in terms of the service that's being delivered is exactly what they're expecting to be delivered, or even above what they're expecting to be delivered.
Does anyone have any sort of really good examples of any businesses that are perhaps doing that? I mean, Martin, with some of the stuff that you might be doing within your business, is there a bit more information you can give us on what you might be doing to do this?
We just focus on making it easy for customers to deal with us. You know, I recently tried to get a small sample of a new product from one of our suppliers or a potential supplier, and it took 2 weeks to fill in the paperwork for me to earn the right to buy that sample from them, by which time that opportunity is long since gone. So many mantras that you can come out with, but don't ask a customer to send an email. If you haven't got the time or the interest level to actually interact with them on the phone and gauge the inquiry, why would they want to put that in an email to you to reply? Okay, you may be able to form a specification from that, but take the time to actually invest and show a level of interest in that. So we've tried to come back to this standardization process and automating things all the way through the business. We have many customers who want products within 3 days. Our average lead time is 2.8 days. So what we have is a system of, if the order is required in more than 5 days, just immediately say yes. And then you're not populating that in the production meeting and taking up valuable time discussing the 5 rush jobs that you may have. So you've standardized that. Anything beyond 3 days, say yes to. Anything less than 3 days, we need to discuss that in the production meeting. And everything that we do throughout this place is focused on the customer, because we are an industry of copies. Everyone can copy Coca-Cola Red. It'll take an hour to do it, but can someone deliver it tomorrow, and can they do it consistently? And that's where we live and die, basically, as a business. So much as you can go through this process of looking internally and all these different iterations of how to change your business and make it more efficient, ultimately it's all got to be to the benefit of the customer and see some growth.
I did that thing where I left my microphone.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I kind of make this a point a lot when I'm talking about sort of continuous improvement, that people have this perception that when you're focused on continuous improvement within an organization, it's to become world class. But that's a very long journey. The next target condition is to be slightly better than the people who do the same things that you do. You know, that's where competitive advantage lies. So it really is just that next step. What differentiates you? What can you do to remove that one non-value added step that makes you more competitive than the competitor, I should say, you know, and not think about that ultimate end goal of being world class.
And like Martin was saying, you've got to be able to back it up, haven't you? If you're going to use automation, like we've all been on the call center on hold for 15 minutes where they're still telling me my call is important to them. Well, I've been on hold 15 minutes. Clearly it isn't. Mm-hmm. But you've got to be able to back it up. So get the processes right, get the standardization and the delivery right, and then go and sell it.
We also drag our suppliers into it a little bit more. So we've got 30 people here in total. But we're competing against multinationals with tens of thousands of people. So we align ourselves with good suppliers and look after them. So that means paying them on time. It means discussing order requirements and demands with them, and not dropping them for 1% on costs. It's about having that discussion with them. There's always a cheaper price, and we found this yesterday on some material. Yeah, well, there was a 15% saving. Material's got to be imported from India. We need it tomorrow because we're delivering to our customer on Friday. So it doesn't work for us as a business. But if we talk with the existing supplier and say, look, we're seeing that the market is reducing in price, we need you to try and support us in return for increased volume or maintaining your volume, then they're more likely to work with us. And what we found is over the past 12 months, when Other people have struggled to get materials. We've had the suppliers coming to us and saying, look, we've put your quarters material to one side because we know you use X quantity in 3 months. And we'll work with them, we'll give them orders to cover that. But if you look after and treat those people well, then they look after you in the times that are difficult. It's been invaluable for us.
Yeah, it's very much about those relationships, isn't it? And that trust, and that they've got trust in you, and you've got faith in them and their service. And like you say, Martin, it's sometimes, it's just not worth going for a cheaper product, just for the level of service and the peace of mind that you're going to get. That that one supplier that you've got is far more reliable, and you know that you're going to get that order on time.
Well, we all expect that of our customers. We all expect loyalty from our customers, and yet people go and cut the legs off their own suppliers. So why does that work in one respect but not the other?
Yeah, it's called a supply chain for a reason, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so relationships are incredibly important. We always say people buy from people, and actually spending an awful lot of time. I work in a people business, as we all know, and it's essential to, like you say, build those really strong, solid foundations and relationships, isn't it? To really help. And at those particular points, when times do get hard, that's when you can really rely on people to perhaps be a bit more flexible and be, and work with you to make it work better for everybody, can't you? So if you're committed to becoming a learning business, how do you find? I mean, it's quite it's a big world out there. There's lots to do. How do you find out what to sort of focus on first? Where would you start, Paul?
Start with what the customer wants.
Yeah.
How rapidly is your market changing, and what customer expectations are. Everybody's saying, take the example of the labour market now, it's just so completely different post-pandemic. People want to work from home, people want the hybrid model. That's the same with customers. Customers' expectations are changing. We're getting more and more of a now, deliver it now society. So what Martin's doing, he knows he can deliver in 3 days, and that's exactly what he sells. It just keeps coming back to what the customer wants, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that message is definitely coming through big and strong, isn't it, today in this? I think sort of understanding under the business and the value streams. I think we've touched on that as well, haven't we?
Yes.
And again, we talked about being an agile business. Talk about kind of maybe perhaps being a bit more of an agile business, and how do people approach that? With regards to how do you sort of start to flex and move around to really kind of help help your business become a bit more reduce those costs and enhance those efficiencies. Salma.
I think talking to people and making sure that everybody, your staff and your staff members and your delivery people and everybody like that, just to make sure that they understand, they're usually champions of what they do in their bit. So they will be able to really sort of tell you sort of how to make their jobs easier, or, what the ideas that they have, and I think that can really that can really sort of help you then, because you'll know your bit, but as your business grows, you have so many different departments doing different things, and I think just being aware of sort of just talking to your people, I think is a really good really good way of sort of improving those efficiencies.
I think that's a really good point. That when we talk about efficiencies within organizations, there will be some departments that will organize what they do to do that particular transaction or that particular activity as efficiently as they possibly can, but that may not be what the customer wants at that previous time. And that's really the definition of agility and listening to the voice of the customer, that at all times people should be working on what's the priority for the customer at that time to make the service or the product flow through the process. And sometimes that's not the most efficient way of doing activities within a specific department. And that's kind of got to be clear, that the focus has got to be the voice of the customer and not just making individual departments as efficient as possible. So something like the restaurant industry is a very good example of that. It's an industry where the voice of the customer is very clear and very loud, and everybody instinctively prioritizes it. So if you're in a restaurant and very close together, 10 orders for fish and chips coming together from 10 different tables, you wouldn't make all of those at once to make it as efficient as possible. You would do it still order by order, because you're kind of driven by the voice of the customer. But in lots of businesses, that internal efficiency takes over, and that departmental efficiency is what sort of drives behaviors. But that isn't agile.
There's a question that's come in onto the chat, which I'm just going to pop in here. Have rising costs changed the equation when it comes to price? Who would like to take that one? Martin?
Yes and no. Ultimately, you've got to be 100% in control of your costs, and there's a lot of information published on the effect of diluting your profit margin by 1%, 5%, and 10%, and how much more material you have to sell to maintain profitability. So it's very easy to think, okay, well, we won't move our price this month, we'll absorb that. But you never get that back. You'll never have that opportunity to get that back. And very soon you'll be in negative margin as a business. And then you're in a really, really difficult position. So, try and be as confident as you can of your company's abilities. And we've had some extremely forthright conversations with customers about discussions. We'll give invoices to show that prices have gone up. We'll do graphs to show this. But ultimately, we will get the increase. Otherwise, we won't run that machine. Because ultimately, everyone's got a headcount in the business.
Yeah.
And you have to support that. So, yeah, the equation has changed, and it just makes it even more important and imperative to focus on your margins and make sure that you're not giving anything away. And if you're forced into giving something away, a margin, what are you getting? Are you getting increased volume for that? Are you getting improved payment terms? What's the trade-off? It shouldn't just be that particular company taking the hit. There needs to be a deal done with the onward customer there.
It's about sort of maybe managing expectations, isn't it? And it again sort of comes back to perhaps that relationship piece, doesn't it, with regards to being open and honest about the position that we're in and what's happening.
Sorry, I was just going to say on that point that Martin made about the trade-off. I think times like this as well are a really good opportunity for then looking at innovation and looking at different ways that you can do things as well. So that you can, to sort of, again, to manage that trade-off and to manage that price rise as well. So again, it is crisis-led sometimes, innovation, and it is where you can start thinking about new ways or different ways of doing things. And like you mentioned, Martin, like maybe different payment options or different sizes, or is there a different way of doing what we're doing?
I think also it depends on the cost, doesn't it? If it's a small part of the overhead cost, you'll probably absorb it to maintain customer loyalty. But take the haulage industry, for example, they have the fuel escalator. So if diesel escalates, rapidly like it has done, well, the fuel escalator goes up. So that's only temporary. And you always run the risk. If this is a temporary high level inflation environment, if you increase your cost now or your selling price now 10, 15, 20%, what happens when inflation goes back to 2-3% next year? Is there going to be that expectation that you take the prices back down? But for us, labour cost is a big thing. Never, ever be afraid. Don't sell on price. If you're selling on price, how good is your product? You should never be afraid to charge the price for the full value that your product or service provides. Yeah.
Absolutely, and be confident in that. We've talked quite a bit about sort of processes. So now I really want, and we have touched on it a little bit, about talking about kind of the employees and the people that are working in those businesses. So how important is it to engage with your employees and talk to them and understand what their thoughts are on the operations within the business? Nick, would you like to take that first?
I was kind of thinking that the phrase that I came in with, everybody solving problems every day, really was my thought on that. And we kind of, there has to be a common understanding of what the goal is, really. And the goal again is related to the voice of the customer, and everybody being focused on adding value the majority of the time, and everything to be aligned to that. And understanding the reasons really why we don't spend the maximum amount of time adding value, and engaging everybody, understanding those reasons, everybody solving problems every day to turn that non-value added activity into value added activity, and looking at those triggers, really, those things I spoke about before, the not right first time, the duplication, the over processing, either giving the customer more than he wants or spending more on utilities and that kind of thing, that all counts as over processing. And again, the big one for me in service industries is things being done earlier than they should be, batching activities together to dilute the inefficiency of that activity, as opposed to understanding that inefficiency and making it flow. And that's kind of got to be the trigger to people. How do we be more responsive to the customer? And that's the challenge to engage your people.
And how do you go about engaging with your people? Have you got any good examples of businesses that are doing, really making really sort of strong strides in engaging their employees in these conversations and helping to become more agile, more flexible, changing operations because they're really having those conversations and engaging the employees? Is there any good examples that you might have?
Yes, lots. And there's a similarity, really. The companies that are good at engaging their people have a very good answer to the question, how do your people know they've had a good day? And they can quantify it in terms of the quality of what they've done, in terms of hitting their customer due dates, in terms of the productivity of what they've done in that day. People at all levels having a common understanding of what actually constitutes a good day, and that definition of a good day being consistent with listening to the voice of the customer and adding value to the customer. But it's consistent across all organizations that I go into. If there's a very clear understanding of what constitutes a good day, and you can measure that and you can communicate it to people, and people feel empowered to take actions to have more good days, then that's the sign of good people engagement.
Absolutely. Martin, how do you engage with your teams and your employees?
We get out and we talk to everyone in the business, because I can guarantee that the shop floor isn't running today as I expect it, and probably as the senior leadership team expect it, because on a macro level, you've got variables in there. You've got process operators doing what they want to do, and they've got things on their mind today about their family and all manner of other things. So a business doesn't run as we expect it to from an organogram point of view. So actually get out and talk to people, ask them what their problems are in a day, and structure this, have a monthly check-in with people. We've done it with some guys who, and it's led to a reorganization of how we store materials and brought the easier or the more often used materials closer to them. Take a little headache away from them, and they're going to engage in this process a little bit more. And when you come up with these big grand schemes of a new machine coming in and how it's going to go into the factory, talk to the guys that are going to use it. I'm not going to use it. I'm going to pay for it, or the customer's going to pay for it through me. But let's put it in a way that's going to suit them better than the last machine that we put in, and take suggestions forward from that point of view. And ultimately, what you've got to do in all of this is find out where the bottleneck is. Everyone's got a bottleneck in the process, be it manufacturing, be it service. There is something that is a bottleneck. And usually there's somebody wandering around, just putting a little bit of oil on that each day to make that work and get through today. If you can find that and start to unblock those problems, then the process happens an awful lot quicker. And it might be something tiny and there may be no cost involved in it. It's not like reinventing the wheel. But talk to everyone through the organization, even the guys offloading the trucks with materials. We classic example, we bring material in container loads from from China. One company uses slightly substandard pallets compared to the other company. That is a cost to us as a business because we can't store it as well in our warehouse. And then we get the pallets breaking and we get damaged. So there's actual cost to us in terms of cash wastage. I wouldn't see that, and the procurement manager wouldn't see that. But the guys on the shop floor see it at 3 o'clock in the morning when they've got to go and take that damaged material out of the warehouse. If you're not engaging with them, you're never going to find out. If you do it with a questionnaire, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Go and talk to them.
Yeah.
Just Rick, to reinforce what Martin said there on suggestions, don't be afraid to do experiments and trials based on what those suggestions are. As long as you've got a clear what you expect to happen, that you can test your hypothesis. Don't be afraid to do just like sort of a week's trial on trying something, because there's no such thing as a failed experiment. It either works or it doesn't work. Either way, your knowledge of the business has improved, and that just becomes your new starting point for your next experiment. But don't be afraid to take people's suggestions and do experiments with them.
Yeah, and that goes back to your point that you made earlier, Nick, isn't it? About, you might not get it right first time, but actually if you give it a go and see how it goes, and then you can continually to start to make maybe improvements. Because
exactly, that's what continuous improvement is. It's plan, do, check, act at the end of the day. There's no such thing as a failed experiment.
Yeah.
As long as you don't keep repeating that experiment every 6 months because you've forgotten that you've done it. As long as you have a process where you move on and set the new standard condition, then that's a good way. Just don't keep doing the same experiments, I suppose, is the point.
It's only a mistake if you do it twice, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Absolutely. So do it in controlled and safe environments where actually you can make those small adapted changes, and it can hopefully see some real significant differences. We very much talked about sort of talking to the people there, but I think, Salma, you mentioned in our sort of pre-briefing calls about sort of creating a digital office and change champions. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's fine. So, and again, just before I go on to that, I think what Nick was saying is that creating that, doing those experiments creates that culture, doesn't it? That culture where employees are confident to speak up, and it does empower your employees to come up with ideas and tell you about ideas. And I think that's really important. And the example that I was going to say about the change champions is I was working for an organization where we were moving into creating a digital office as a response to sort of what's happened post-COVID, etc. And obviously this change would affect a lot of people in a lot of different areas that did different jobs. So one of the things that did happen was we had change champions for different areas. So say for the admin team or for the services team, etc. And they could sort of speak to their own teams and their own colleagues within their own section, and sort of get some feedback from them in terms of, right, we're looking at changing, things are going to be different. Have you got any ideas to make things better and easier for you? And I think, again, it all goes back to that empowerment, isn't it? It's about speaking to your people and really understanding sort of, what problems they've got or what things would make it easier. And like Martin said, maybe the senior management don't see the things that the shop floor people see, and and that's what it's about, is really, and it creates that culture as well where like we say, where employees are able to speak, they're confident to be able to put their ideas forward, and doing those experiments. So so at least, and I think that creates, and then what that does is that improves that brand name as well, and the and it attracts better employees to the business as well. So there's a lot of benefits to having that culture of where you listen to people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think COVID taught us all a really sort of valuable lesson where we were all kind of locked away in our own homes. And from a business leader's point of view, the understanding what the situation of your individual employees during that time was absolutely imperative, because everybody's situation was very different, whether that's that they'd got kids at home or that they were living on their own in a city centre flat and didn't get any outdoor, had no outdoor space to go and escape to, and all of those sorts of things. And really getting under the skin of each and and every one of your employees was vital. And we know that the health and well-being piece really catapulted, although it's always been here and it's always been something that should have been probably more of a priority. It became, it really did escalate, didn't it, during the COVID period, and helped, business leaders really started to understand how important understanding and listening to their employees actually was during that particular period. And I know that that's one of the sort of founding principles of the Good Employment Charter, which I'm just going to use this as a bit of an opportunity for anyone who is listening. The Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter helps businesses to better engage with their employees, to create that better culture. It gives some founding principles and of how you can better engage with your employees and provide better employment best practices. So if anyone does want to know anything more about that, I'm sure that we can share some more information on that as well, because it's a really good starting point if you are looking to improve your employment practices within your businesses, and perhaps sort of engage better with your employees.
I think that all leads to agility as well. The starting point on this was about becoming an agile organization, and it all fits. There is a correlation, isn't there?
Yes.
Between good employee engagement and agility.
And Chris, and as Salma talked about, creating that right culture where people can come forward, they can bring ideas to the table, and actually that can make real significant changes and efficiencies and improve that productivity within that business. So we're moving nicely actually into sort of the next question, whereas obviously this all sounds like quite a lot of work, but let's really talk about kind of the benefits of lean businesses and agile businesses, and what are the real tangible benefits of making this approach? Paul, should we go to you first?
I think for me, if you've got an engaged and enthusiastic workforce that's delivering for the customer, everything's going to be moving in the right direction. So the world has changed, pace of change is getting quicker. So we'll have a one big focus every 3 months, and then we'll sit down with everybody. What does that mean for them? What support, help do they need to help us achieve that? And what the overall benefit is for the organization. You can't, if you're listening to your employees, the benefit is it just gets magnified and magnified.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Martin, is there anything to add to that? Some of the benefits that you've seen with your business?
Ultimately, if you become more lean and agile as a business, everything becomes easier. You get that rush order. I've been in positions in the past where you'd get the phone call from the MD or the production director, and you knew it was because you weren't going to fulfill this urgent requirement, so he was pulling the favour lever. If you become lean and agile and fitting rush orders in becomes routine, then that disappears. You're not shoehorning things into your production plan. You're not asking somebody to work overtime to prepare a tender for somebody. It just becomes routine, and routine becomes easier. It's more standardized. Waste reduces, productivity increases, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. It's a difficult process to do, and as Nick has said, you'll do these experiments which will fail, and you'll think we're not going forward. But what you do have to do is look for the end goal, and your business or your organization or your role will be far easier on a daily basis.
Absolutely. I think, Paul, when we did the pre-briefing call, you talked about leaving the joy in.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Operating in North Manchester, it's quite easy to get your cost base lower than the competition to help maximise profits. But the problem with that is you continually chase that 1% improvement, which you like to think is always there. No matter what you did yesterday, you can always do 1% better today. But it fixated on the process and the standardization that we started to forget about the employee, and it just became boring. It was like the Model T Ford. You were on the production line on McDonald's. Do you want fries with that? You knew what was coming, but was there really that much enjoyment for the employee? So we stepped back a bit and made sure that the employee was fully engaged as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they become your ambassadors, don't they?
Yeah.
you know, and then it's talking about work when they're not in work, and really sort of shouting about the business. There's nothing more powerful than people who work within a business saying how wonderful that business is to work in, right?
Yeah.
But you can only do that, Paul, because you've been through the process.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 I mean, probably like yourself, it was painful. You know, we learnt a lot from it. But are we a better business? Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Which I would never ever go back now.
No.
Yeah.
But, you know, we'll always, every week we'll look at changing anything and everything.
Excellent. We are coming into the sort of final stretch of the day. So just a reminder that if anyone does have any questions, please do pop them in the questions box, and I will feed them in. But I think we're just going to kind of go back to, at this point, sort of the sort of final couple of questions from me of this is wonderful. It's absolutely valuable information for everybody. And like I say, it's almost kind of, it can be a little bit overwhelming for businesses. So, you know, where do you start? Where do we start? Salma?
I just think in terms of, you know, I think right when we went to the beginning, in terms of just looking at your processes and how you do things, and you know, is there a better way of doing things, and just looking at sort of, you know, what you're offering, and is it really what the customer wants, and just and the other points that we made about just talking to your teams and just understanding sort of, you know, their points of view and their ideas, and I think that's a good place to start.
Great. But Martin?
Start somewhere. Everyone's now going to leave this webinar and either walk out of their office or into another area, and somebody will come to them with a question, problem, stroke, challenge. Make that the one that you start at, because there's always going to be an excuse. You will always be too busy not to do it. So why not do it right now with the thing that's going to be on the other side of this door, and tackle that? And don't go around, as people say, picking up everybody's monkeys within the business or the organization. Identify what that problem is, delegate it for somebody else to come up with a solution for, and then ask for some feedback later today. How did you get on with curing that issue that you had with X or Y? So don't take it all on yourself, but indirectly empower somebody else and make a start now, because there's always going to be a reason why not to make a start.
That's absolutely right. And I think that's a really, really good point, isn't it? I think that sometimes when these situations arise, the starting point can almost paralyze people, but actually just start small and get started. Just get stuck in, throw yourself in, and then and going back to Nick's point before, you know, don't worry about not getting it right necessarily the first time. Just keep trying.
Yeah. Keep trying. The biggest challenge is going to come at the worst time, and that's when you've got to really meet it head on and get stuck into it. We're all so concerned about energy prices. Ultimately, there's very little we can do about them, but there's thousands of other things that we can control and have an impact on that will start to offset that and bring it a little bit more into balance. So let's start doing those now.
Yeah. And I think, you know, from my perspective, I mean, COVID for every business was incredibly, incredibly difficult. But I look at Pro Manchester pre-COVID and I look at Pro Manchester now, and actually, because we had some, you know, essentially we'd organise a lot of events, so you know we couldn't do any of that physical activity anymore, so we had to move online, which was something that I'd always wanted to do, but kept putting it off, didn't necessarily have the resource or time to be able to, you know, really focus in on that. And now, you know, we've got a streamlined process, as does the Growth Company and all of those other organisations that do similar activity, and now that means we've got a much more diverse, wonderful offer, much more accessible for everybody, with regards to going forward. So although those times were really, really tough, as you say, these things, you know, during those tough times, really, really good stuff can happen, can't it, when you're faced with that adversity? And actually, it'd be quite interesting, you know, we're talking about reducing energy costs, and obviously we're all talking about climate change at the moment as well. So two huge things that are really, really high up on the agenda. And you know, can we use this really, really challenging challenging times to really start to look at how we can be much more efficient and much more kinder to our environment? I don't know if anyone's got any particular thoughts on that, Nick. Maybe you're nodding.
No, I think with that one, with certainly with climate change and energy, the challenge is with inefficient processes. You're still paying all of those bills to do something inefficiently. I think if you drive the performance within your business, you respond to the voice of the customer, you focus more on adding value and solving those problems, you're kind of, you know, to a certain extent, you're beginning to do your bit. You know, if you're doing things more effectively and you're not leaving the lights on to do things that aren't required, or you're leaving the lights on to do duplicated activities or things that aren't right first time, it's an opportunity to improve. You know, and it's quite a good carrot to bring people in. You know, people don't often understand the implications of the bottom line within your organization. But if you can get them to focus on something, if you can get them to focus on, you know, this whole thing of be lean and green, you know, because there are climate benefits in doing things more effectively and making more for less, you know, and if people can just engage on that level, again, it's an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was listening to one of the previous webinars, which was what your business can do to reduce the energy costs. And it was some of those just really simple tips about, you know, making sure that, you know, you've not got lights on when you don't need to be using them, and just very, very sort of simple, quite obvious kind of solutions really to really reducing your energy costs. But sometimes it's just a matter of kind of bringing them to the fore and really thinking about it, thinking, do we need to be doing that right now? And actually, can we save some energy and save some time by not doing that? It's just reinforcing that in terms of the cycle of continuous improvement, that you want people to identify improvements and standardize them. It's easy to do that around something that people feel passionate about. So it's easy to do it around health and safety, because people have a natural feeling around that, and it's easy to do it around the environment as well. And if you can get them to make improvements to focus on reducing those costs within the business, you can then get them to make improvements based on productivity improvements and those kind of things. It's the same plan, do, check, act process, really. Yeah, it comes back to that empowerment piece and really touching on things that are important to people, isn't it? And
exactly, yes.
Firing them up in the right places.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Paul, have you got anything with any tips on where to start? Anything else to add?
I was going to say, yeah, just coming back to that, it's what we find with many small businesses is they spend too long working in the business rather than on it. So you end up firefighting, just trying to get rid of the next little problem rather than taking that helicopter blue sky approach. So if you took a blank piece of paper and sat in a coffee shop now and said, I'm going to start my business from scratch, how would you run it? There are no rules. You can do whatever you want. How would you start it? And you can adapt to change, because how many people put together a budget or a forecast and penciled in March 2020, we're going to shut everything. We're all going to work from home. We're all going to go digital. But yet here we are, back end of 2022. We're all still in business. So rather than it being forced on you, take that time to work on the business and put you in the driving seat. It's a lot less stressful.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point. I think we're all guilty of that, aren't we? Of just, you know, carrying on with the everyday because that's the way it's always been done, and you just crack on. And actually, sometimes there's real value in sitting back for a moment and saying, right, okay, actually, let's start at the beginning with this. And I think that's a really good point. Thanks, Paul. Just last couple of minutes. Does anyone have anything else that they would, you know, really like to add to this conversation before I wrap us up?
I was just going to say about the point that Paul made about like your financial forecasts and things like that. Again, I think that's a really good way of looking at how you can reduce costs, is looking at your forecasts and payments that you've got coming up and things like that. Because sometimes, a lot of times, companies automatically just renew subscriptions and premiums and things like that. So maybe that's a good opportunity just to look at what you are, you know, what value you are getting for the money you're paying, or maybe changing things around. And, you know, another opportunity maybe to look at your costs and how you can reduce them.
Yeah, fantastic. Martin, Nick, any final words from you?
I would say just for business leaders, understand your process. Really, go look see to your process. Understand the barriers to flow within your process, so that you're spending more of the time adding value. And the barriers will be where work isn't flowing, where it's built up for some reason, and just understand the reasons for that. Work gets batched together because it's inefficient, And you have the choice either to allow it to batch and live with that inefficiency, or understand the reason why it's inefficient and reduce it. And the more you can make the workflow, you're leaving the lights on again for less time. That's the point. You're not sort of heating and lighting the building to do stuff that the customer doesn't want. Just understand the barriers to flow.
Fantastic. Martin, final word from you?
Yeah, just to reiterate what Nick was just saying, if you can become 20% more efficient, you're going to use 20% less energy. And we're all staring down the barrel of the gun of something we can't do anything about directly. So just use less energy. But as a practical tip, just as Nick said, go around various areas of your business that you wouldn't potentially go around, and just ask a few people why are you doing that? Why is this broken? Why are you not using this? And just gather that feedback and use it, but use it in a carrot way rather than a stick, because you've got to break the link of a manager or owner going out talking to somebody and then a disciplinary or something negative happening. So you need to break that link, ask why, find out, and do something to improve it for them. And that will start this culture of people wanting to help and engage a little bit more. So just wander around your factories. The people I know that will not go into their factory, they'll let their leadership team do it. They have no idea what's going on in the business.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, I think, as we wrap up, I think that the message is loud and clear today that people are invaluable in your business to help in reducing your costs and improving your efficiency and productivity. That's your customers and also the people that are working in your business as well, and understanding each and every single one of them to make sure that they feel empowered to help make those real interesting and profitable changes to your business that will really help it to move forward and develop and grow. And also, we all go through tough times, but the tough times actually is where also a lot of the development happens as well. And I think if we want to finish on a really positive point, we're going to look at facing this and looking down the barrel of the gun, as you say, Martin, but at the same time, how can we make things 10 times better moving forward? And I think this is an opportunity for us to make some real significant differences to our businesses, to our cultures within our businesses, and to the environment and our world as well. So a really great session. Thank you so much, Martin, Nick, Salma and Paul. Lovely to chat to you today. And thank you so much. So wonderful to see you all. The next session coming up is on Tuesday, the 8th of November at 9 a.m. And that's around change leadership. And also for anybody that is interested, we also have a lean workshop on the 1st of December, 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. And that's led by Nick as well. So the booking link is there, and I'm sure that they will be sending the slides around to everybody so you can book on and get your places to attend that as well. It was lovely to see you all. It was an absolute pleasure to chair this discussion. Really interesting. Thank you so much. And I hope you all have a wonderful Tuesday.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.